William Seward, the U.S. Secretary who bought Alaska. During the Civil War, William Seward served as Governor of New York, as a U.S. Senator, and as Secretary of State. Seward worked as a lawyer before being elected to the New York State Senate in 1830. An ardent abolitionist, Seward later served as New York's 12th governor and then as a member of the United States Senate, where he established himself as a leading anti-slavery activist. Seward was appointed Secretary of State in Abraham Lincoln's cabinet after failing to win the Republican presidential nomination in 1860. During the Civil War, he became one of Lincoln's closest advisers, helping to ensure that Europe did not recognize the Confederacy as a sovereign nation. Seward served as Secretary of State under President Andrew Johnson and negotiated the purchase of Alaska from the Russians in 1867. Before we get started, if this is your first time here, please subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any new videos. William Seward. The early life. William Henry Seward was born on May 16, 1801 in Florida, New York. Seward began attending Union College in Schenectady, New York, in 1816, and worked briefly as a schoolteacher in Georgia in 1819. In 1820, he graduated from Union College and went on to study law before being admitted to the bar in 1822. In 1822, Seward relocated to Auburn, New York, and joined Judge Elijah Miller's law firm. He married Miller's daughter, Frances Adeline Miller, in 1824. They eventually had 5 children and 1 adopted daughter. Seward was a successful lawyer who became interested in politics. As a member of the Anti-Masonic Party, a political faction opposed to the secretive Freemasons, he was elected to the New York State Senate in 1830. Seward later became a Whig party leader, but he was soundly defeated when he ran for governor of New York in 1834. He then left politics to practice law and work for the Holland Land Company, a syndicate of Dutch investors who had purchased vast swaths of land in western New York. His political career. Seward later returned to politics with the assistance of Thurlow Weed, a prominent journalist and close political ally. As a Whig, he was elected governor of New York in 1838. Seward was president for 2 terms and spent much of his time focused on prison reform, infrastructure improvements, and improving the state's education system. He was an ardent abolitionist who spoke out against slavery and caused a minor uproar in 1839 when he refused to extradite a group of black fugitives to Virginia. Seward was deeply in debt after leaving office in 1842 and was forced to devote himself to his law practice. In 1849, Whigs in the New York legislature elected him to the United States Senate. During his time in the Senate, Seward rose to prominence as an anti-slavery activist. He was a leading opponent of the 1850 Compromise, a set of measures that tightened the fugitive slave law and preserved the slave trade in the South. Seward famously stated on the Senate floor that slavery was an immoral practice and that there was a higher law than the Constitution. Seward was re-elected to the Senate in 1855, and after the Whigs were disbanded, he joined the Republican Party. While Seward had presidential ambitions, his outspoken nature and lack of party loyalty frequently hampered his political progress. Throughout the late 1850s, he remained outspoken in his opposition to slavery, and he alarmed many of his supporters by describing the impending Civil War as a irrepressible conflict. While hoping to secure the Republican presidential nomination in 1860, Seward spent the majority of 1859 traveling throughout Europe and the Middle East. His party support dwindled, and in May 1860, he lost the nomination to Abraham Lincoln. The treaty with Russia for the purchase of Alaska. On March 30, 1867, the United States reached an agreement with Russia to purchase Alaska for $7.2 million. Secretary of State William Seward and Russian Minister to the United States Eduard de Steckel negotiated and signed the treaty with Russia. The deal to buy Alaska was dubbed Seward's Folly, or Seward's Icebox by critics. With the discovery of gold in the Klondike in 1896, opposition to the purchase of Alaska faded. Following President Ulysses S. Grant's inauguration, Seward resigned in 1869. His final years would be spent traveling, beginning with trips to the western United States, Alaska, and Mexico. Before returning to New York in 1871, Seward traveled around the world, visiting the Far East and Europe. He died at the age of 71 in 1872. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, please give us a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments.